So today is the first session of Content and Experience, and we have a great session for you today, which includes Adam Crane, who is the Global Marketing Taxonomist from Dell, a global company, and our own solution consultant, Glen Lawson. And today they're going to take you through using machine learning to enhance your content workflows. But what they're really going to dive into is how can you manage great experience at scale. There's three things that you really need: people, process, and technology. So they're going to dive into really how Adam at Dell has been able to set up success internally by delivering great workflows and asset taxonomy in a global company. So I'd love to welcome to the stage Adam Crane from Dell. Oh, you don't need it.
Thank you very much, Amy. I'm very excited to be here. It's always a pleasure. I don't get to come to Sydney very often, but I've been before, and once again, the people and places here have been fantastic. So very excited to be part of the Symposium and being able to tell our story at Dell. And what I'm going to do as we go through this is take you through kind of level set expectations. I think in going through these type of discussions, it's great to kind of understand what we have set up at Dell and how we attacked it. And then you can then look at it and compare it to yours. You may look at our dam that has 180,000 assets, and you may look at that and go, well, that's nothing. We have 10 million or 20 million, whatever it's going to be. Or you may look at it and say, well, that's really large. So, and we have a couple of environments that we have set up, and we have librarians, and we have different ways that we've kind of attacked this, and I think it's good to just go through a couple of slides that kind of help you understand where we are, so you can just kind of compare and contrast. One of the things that I really like doing, going through these slides, is to let you understand just how we've approached our strategy for doing this. And I love to talk to other folks, afterwards. I'm more than happy to talk to you, and I love to learn and see. There may be things that we do that we could do better, and you're doing differently in your solution. Or maybe you have more information or would like to get more information about what we do, and I'm more than happy to share that. So two things that I will ask for your permission as we go through this. Number one is, just for the ease of having this discussion, is I will use metadata and taxonomy synonymously. And I understand, obviously, those are not exactly the same thing, but just so I don't have to say metadata 8,000 times, I'll use taxonomy sometimes. So if you'll grant me that. The second thing is, one of the pieces that I'll talk about a lot is findability. I understand that findability is not an actual word, but if you'll grant me the license to use findability, I have yet to find a word that actually works just as good. So this is kind of the 50,000 foot view of what we have set up and what we were looking for in the strategy that we wanted at Dell. So it's our content ecosystem. We really needed to enable the dynamic content delivery. We needed to improve the Marcom toolset, and we wanted to connect to the marketing automation that we had. So that's a very high level what we were looking to do probably a little over 2 years ago in rolling out this roadmap and what it was going to look like. So the cornerstone of that was going to be the one Dell Dam. So it was the single source of truth for all of our marketing assets at Dell. And we wanted it to be that linchpin for the dynamic delivery system. Cloud-based, sitting on AEM. It needed to be Dell IT supported and funded, which was important to us. We didn't want to have to outsource that, and that was a situation that we were in previously. And we wanted to have those APIs, those connectors to our existing systems. So that was really important. So again, the high level, the one Dell Dam, and it was going to be a migration. So we were migrating from an existing third-party solution that wasn't managed by Dell IT. We worked very closely with a partner that was doing it, but again, we didn't really have the control that we were looking for and wanted to do. So it was important for us to go ahead and make sure that we got that control. One of the unique things that we rolled out is what we call our SemiNetwork, subject matter experts throughout the globe. And we wanted to work with them very closely to make sure that we were going to get buy-in. There were going to be a number of changes that I'll talk about as we go through this. And some of the changes were going to be big changes for everybody. So we wanted to make sure that we could get a global network of SMEs that could buy into what we were doing and become, for themselves, they could become the expert. They could be a recognized leader. They could take and be a key role in the transformational nature of this next-gen step that we were taking. They would get experience in working with the dam. So we really wanted to position them as leaders. And then they would go forth on their teams and be able to make sure that they're preaching what we're trying to do, and they're helping it out. So if somebody is local in a market that's not in the US and is having problems with the dam, rather than looking to try and contact us at a different hour, a different time, or whatever it may be, they have a local person that they can go to that says, hey, how do I do this? How do I start a workflow? How do I upload some assets? How do I enhance the metadata? And what really can I do? So it was important for us to kind of set that apart, and this was one of the things that we really needed to focus on as we built it through. So more or less just 3 quick high-level points. It's a single source of truth, as I mentioned. We have an average about 11,000 users on any given month. Those are active users, so those are people that are in there regularly. Anybody that's Dell badged, any Dell badged employee has access through our single sign-on. So that's really convenient for everybody. So that was important for us to make sure that we had that single sign-on, and the active users are around 11,000. Chaotic content. I think everybody's familiar with it. We talked about it. There was plenty of that discussion yesterday at the keynotes, that chaotic content. We needed to make sure that we organize that. Myself and the digital librarians and a great team that we have, that's really our focus, is to make sure that we're getting things organized. And deliver that content. Being able to deliver that content, make it available to consuming systems, make it available to everybody. So again, really important for us to have this. Just, I know it's a lot of words on the slide, so I apologize for that, but it just kind of gives you a quick before and after. So before, people really came down to confidence. People did not have confidence that if they uploaded something to the dam that they were going to be able to find it later. So it was important for us to try and address that. Things saved on local hard drives. We weren't sure about compliance as far as legal issues for any of the content. No standards, no governance. As I said, the poor search experience. Just really all the no's and bad and all the things you can think of that you don't want on the before. And then after has really helped us out, right? So helped us out as far as consolidating it, getting all into one place, getting it organized, working with our users, starting those communications that we had, ongoing communications to make sure that they understand what we were trying to do. So like I said, just a quick before and after. This is a snapshot of the way that we have our system set up. So we have 2 environments. So as you're looking at it on your left-hand side, you'll see the author environment. So the author environment is where you go for content creators. All of our content creators will take the content that they have, be it images, product images, or lifestyle images, or Marcom communications, whatever that may be. Those get uploaded, metadata put into and on all of the assets. We have a librarian team, so we have librarians who will take a look at it. They'll double check the content, and I'll talk a little bit about how they do that. They'll double check the content to make sure it fits with the quality and standards that we need, and then they are actually the ones that will publish it. So they publish it to our asset share portal, the actual Dell Dam, and as I said, that's the one that's available for all Dell badged employees, and they can go in and download those assets. So if you need something for a PowerPoint, if you need something for a campaign, whatever you may need, it's available. So how did we take this trip? So we talked in the keynotes yesterday, they talked about experience. So this is a little bit different experience, but it does have a little bit of nostalgia for you. So this is our experience. So it was a journey. It was something that I think about and kind of harken back to maybe those summer trips you took as a family where everybody piled into the car and you went for a week somewhere and had a great time and had all those great feelings that you kind of think back on now when you're considering that or thinking about a great holiday that you took maybe somewhere. But it's that wilderness, right? It's out there. You don't know what's going on. You've never heard of metadata. It's never been something that you find is important. So I'll take you through that and kind of use that analogy as we go through this discussion, to kind of show you what we were thinking about. So this is how we started our experience and our journey. These are some of the things that we did, again, and more than happy to talk to everybody as the day goes on about individual questions, or maybe there are other things that you've done, but this is what works for us. And most importantly, what we're really looking forward to, and Glen and I will talk about it a little bit later, in 6.4. We think about 6.4, and we're very excited about some of the features that are coming in there. And I think that's where the machine learning comes into it. I think a lot of those features driven by machine learning, we're very excited to take advantage of that. So with any great trip, the first thing you have to do is you got to make sure that you get everything organized. So you're starting it, and again, this is a little over 2 years ago. We needed to get organized, and we needed to figure out what we're going to do. So the important thing you want to do is ask yourself the question, what are your goals? At the end of the day, at the end of when everything is set up, when you're good to go and everything is launched in production, what are your goals? So for us, we needed a single governed repository of marketing assets. And we wanted it available to everybody, everywhere, and we wanted it easy to use. We didn't think that was an outlandish claim or outlandish goal, but that's what we were looking for. We wanted that single source of truth. As I mentioned, we had things saved on people's hard drives. We weren't sure about the legality of some of it. We couldn't track any of that information. So it was very important that this was a single source of truth. And everybody in the company would know where to go to get that logo, that picture, whatever it was going to be. As part of that process, as you would imagine, it was a deep, involved business case. ROI, cost benefit, all of that information was baked into a presentation that was presented to the senior leadership team, and they bought into it. And that's exactly what we needed. We needed to get buy-in from the highest levels that this is the correct direction that we needed to go. So it's very important that you understand that. For you, it could be any of those things. It may be none of those. Maybe you're just trying to avoid having the duplicative work. Maybe it's compliance, one of the things that we were concerned about. There are success metrics that you might have in your company. You want to address those. Reporting, future planning, whatever it may be. But make sure you start looking at those goals and really understanding it. It set us up for personalization at scale. And also, we also were tracking our eNPS, our Net Promoter Score. We wanted to make sure that this was going to be something that everybody was going to buy into. So we've had a lot at stake on this, that we're going to track this year over year and make sure that we understand how we're doing. So it's very important to understand what your goals are going forward. Avoid repeating mistakes. This is the part in any type of these things where you want to make sure that you're very honest. You're asking those honest questions and you're being very honest with yourself. So what doesn't work today? So for us, where it didn't meet our needs, the confusing interface, difficult to find assets, all of those type of things, those were all top of mind for us. I think as you go through that, you want to make sure that you're asking yourself those same things. You probably don't want to be chasing any of the buzzwords. Blockchain's a great big buzzword that's going on now. I'm fairly certain you don't need blockchain in any type of dam today. You may need it in the future, but it's not something you need to chase right now. Our old dam was felled by limited old technology. We didn't have good metadata management, search. As I had mentioned, we had lost confidence from our users. Those were all very important things, and we needed to be, very frank with ourselves that that's what we were running into. You don't want to repeat those mistakes. You don't want to tell yourself a story that's not true. So it was all very important for us. And it gives you a great understanding of what users need. So as you go through that process, you can understand really what users need. So this showed us and showed the users, most importantly, that we were taking this very seriously. When they saw that we were listening to them, understanding what their frustrations are, and making sure that we were planning for the future, they knew that we were taking this seriously. It was not just going to be another project that was moving along. This is where I came in. Train everybody about the importance of metadata. So one of the things that I hope that everybody takes away from this discussion is, in my opinion, metadata is just as easy and just as valuable as the content itself. And I think that's one of the pieces you have to take away. If you don't have good metadata, it doesn't matter where your content lives. It's always going to be the frustration of throwing it in a data lake and hoping that you can find it later. If you don't have that confidence, if you don't understand the value that the metadata brings to it, then you need to make sure that you kind of repurpose that and rethink about it as the value chain of where metadata sits. Metadata itself, small m, small d. Make sure that you're the proponent for that. Make sure that folks understand what metadata is. Hold the basic workshops to explain to folks that metadata is data about data. and go further into that. Show them exactly. Use real-life examples for how that is. That's one of those things. I can be one of those annoying people on phone calls and con calls that I'll correct people when I see a slide that has metadata spelled out with a capital M and a capital D. That's not the way that it is. Let's make sure it's not 2 words, it's just 1 word. So make sure that you get serious about it. And that resonates through. When people understand the way that you're using it and the way that you take it seriously, then they take it seriously as well. Users can take control and they can own their metadata, but it's got to be regulated a little bit. You can't let the folks just go ahead, add their own keywords. In my opinion, I think that's a dangerous path to take, but you can regulate it. You can certainly work with them, and I can give a few examples of where we do that in Dell today. So again, just very quickly as we go along here, we're organizing things at this point. We're making sure that we're laying the groundwork so that we have a really successful trip. Be honest with yourself, set goals, and then train everybody. You really want to make sure that everybody is trained and understand where you're going. So now we're going to prepare for the trip. So we've organized things, and now we're getting ready to prepare for the trip. So as part of that, you start packing. And as part of it, you can look at it and say, well, let's take a look at what we have. So examine your existing content. For us, it was a migration. So in your case, maybe it's a migration. Maybe you're just setting up a new dam. Maybe you're starting from scratch, which has some advantages. For us, we were going to be migrating. So do a full audit. Look at all of the content that you have now. And what are some of the insights that you wish you had? Maybe you want to better understand how assets are being used. Take a look at what's old. If you have really old content in there, there's no need to continue to have that old content. It's less important. As part of our migration, we were looking at things that were 2011, 2012, 2013. And we had serious discussions like, does it even make sense for us to migrate that content over? We don't want to spend the time and hassle of migrating all that. So, and what's been lost? What maybe is in there but you haven't seen before? That full content audit will help you discover some of those things. So again, for us, having that single repository was really going to drive our next-gen marketing. So it was important for us to understand where we stood today. So that full audit is very helpful for that. You also want to continue those discussions with your users, and this is something that we take very seriously, and you'll see throughout a lot of these slides. We talk to our customers about data, not UI, not workflow, data itself. I mean, the UI is important, and certainly their workflows are very important discussions to have, but we also wanted to talk to them about their data. What works for them and what doesn't? Are there different fields that they would need? Do they need new fields? Are there fields that are just useless? Really pin them down on, well, you're giving us this content and it has this particular data field here. Do you really need that? Do you really, we look at your content and it's only filled out about 10% of the time. Is that something that's really valuable? So have those discussions, and again, it starts building that. It does a couple of things. Number one, it really starts building and training yourself to be talking and having those open discussions with your customers or your stakeholders. Also lets them understand that you're really taking this seriously, and it's different from any previous trips and projects that you've been through. So, if you can, and Dell was lucky enough to find me, hire a guide or train somebody. All right, you probably have people in your company that are data focused. Maybe you're lucky enough to have a taxonomist. Are there any taxonomists in the room besides myself? Yes, a couple. Great. So hire a taxonomist if you have the means to do that. It's a critical position that can really take you through this and kind of have the guide. But at the same time, there are plenty of content folks that kind of fill that role. You don't necessarily have to have taxonomist in your title to act and be in that role and be aware of data and metadata and the value in those pieces. So you can work with those folks. You can certainly train folks, right? There are plenty of opportunities to train that. Henry Stewart conferences are a great opportunity to train and understand how DAM training, metadata management, all of those pieces. They have webinars. I've attended a number of those, and those are fantastic. Dataversity is another online resource that I would suggest. That's very technical. That really goes into the nuts and bolts of metadata management, but there's a lot of good information that you can have in there. So I think it's just one of those pieces that as you go through it, if you can really get somebody that's focused on this as their full-time job, it really makes this process go a little bit quicker. So now that we've prepared things, You've done your audit, you've started building the habits, and you're now training folks on the importance of metadata. So now you're closer to getting ready to go. So now we're at launch, right? So we're ready to go ahead and take those steps and start really implementing what you've been looking at. Like any big project, you're not going to be able to do everything at once. You're going to have to prioritize the must-haves. For us, it was improving the confidence and findability. That was the #1 overall. We knew that going into it and with our launch that we needed to make sure that everybody had confidence that they could find the information that they needed. They knew it was there and they'd be able to find it. Afterwards, you know, if we get to talking, I can tell you, as we launched, the production uptime for our initial system was not where we'd like it to be. But we didn't take a hit as far as users go, because when they could access it and they knew we were improving and working on it, the confidence and findability was there. So they knew, and we were able to address exactly what they're looking at. So even though it wasn't an absolute perfect launch, we were able to really make some strides and make sure that our users understood what we were going to do. So they understood that we had a fleshed out schema. They understood that I was hired, that the librarians were there, and we were all there to help support them in finding their data and making sure that they could do it exactly the way that they needed to do their job, the way that they needed to do it. So, and as we went through that process and going through the other priorities that we had ticking off the system, they could see we were making improvements. You know, very shortly after launch, we had a rock solid production system. So everything was up and our uptime was fantastic. So they could see the improvements that we were making. We would continue the conversations that we had with our users. So in our author environment, as folks update and upload their assets, they have to fill in the metadata. On the first page, we moved everything so that the users would have all of the required fields right there on the first page. So we wanted to make sure that, again, that everything was going to be seamless and that we were making improvements so that they would be able to enjoy the system and continue to use it and not go down the path of, you know, saving things on local hard drives. So we wanted to make sure that we continued the open communications. So this is one of the areas that we really focus on, and to this day we continue to focus on. Make it routine. So we continually involve our users. We have metadata specific surveys that we send out. So we send out quarterly surveys for the DAM, and certainly we ask them, you know, how are the workflows going? What's the uptime like? But there are metadata specific questions in there. What fields do you think don't work? What fields do work? Is the search working correctly? How is the folder structure? All of those specific questions so that we can get real-time feedback and make sure that we understand how that's going. We have ongoing bi-weekly SME meetings. So if you think of the slide that I had showed previously with that global map with the SMEs, we meet with them every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, we meet with them and discuss what our next launch is going to be, maybe any work coming up. If I've had a new release of the metadata schema, I'll let them know about it. Changes, all of those features go to the SME. That way the SMEs can then take it back to their teams and they can understand the thought process behind the changes that are coming up and kind of alert those users to say, oh yeah, that's right, that DAM that we launched 2 years ago, you know, that's still going strong and it's getting some great new features. One of the things that I really like to do is I'll reach out to customers and I'll talk to them about how they organize and how they would like to organize their content. I'll run card sorts. I'll run tree jack tests. I'll run metadata surveys. The card sorts are a great thing that I love to do. So I'll work with some of our content owners and stakeholders and talk to them about how they're organizing their card sorts. We worked with the brand folks. They had a bunch of icons that they wanted to organize in the DAM. And they were really struggling with how they could organize those icons. So I worked with them to develop a card sort. The tool that we use is Optimal Workshop, which I think has some really great tools for doing those type of things. So I built some cards. So we built some cards, we ran the card sort, and the #1 thing that we learned about doing card sorts and thinking about it as far as icons goes is that you don't want to do card sorts with icons. Nobody likes to do that. We had, it's a very difficult content set to do. People really struggled to go through that. But that gave us good information. That was more information than we had before we ran that card sort. And what we ended up doing was allowing them to have an index page, because users just look at icons and they think about organizing them really uniquely. But we've done card sorts for our lifestyle photos. Our lifestyle folder structure Again, coming from the old system, really had some changes that we needed to update. So we did some card sorts in the lifestyle folders to understand how people would like to look at things. And what we really found out is that people take a look at it and they look at our lifestyle photos and say whether or not they have a product or they don't have a product. They were very strong about that. They were also very strong about the locations for the lifestyle photos. Was the person at work? Were they at a park? Were they at home? What type of work were they at? And those are all insights that we didn't have previously, but it helped us organize how we were going to have that content. So it was those open communications, really having that back and forth. When your data organizer reaches out to you as a stakeholder and asks you to participate in that type of thing, you really do get confidence that, hey, these people are really thinking about how we're going to keep this stuff organized. They really do care about making sure that this system is different than the previous system that we have. So that's important. So as you're going through this, of course, you'll come across things where you need to improve your data. But you can iterate on that, right? You can go through, take a look at the data, and it doesn't have to be just right in the middle of having all of that information and thinking about it en masse. Like, oh, I have all this data that I need to clean. Just iterate as you go through it. Look for outliers. Look for the stuff that you can really clean up on your own. If you think about your DAM, if you think about the metadata that you probably have a numeric field that's a unique identifier or something that's a numeric field. Have you ever looked for text in that field? Because that's one of the things that I came across actually not that long ago, where I was looking for it, doing some other work on the DAM and ran across some text in a numeric field. And that makes me think, well, how many others of those are there? So I'm going to take a look at that. We can look at the data. What I ended up finding out in one of those trips was our keyword field that we had, which has since been retired, but one of the old ones that we had 32 pages of keywords for one asset, which was just far too many. And as we looked at it, there was a duplication error that was going through that. But again, it was just one of those outliers that I can fix. How many others do we have? We had a handful of others. On the grand scheme of things, it's probably not the big win that you're looking for, but I think it points out that you can make these changes and make the data cleaner as you go along. It's not something that has to be done first day. Everything has to be perfect. We'll talk to our users and ask them about the particular fields that they have. So we have a particular field that was called a legal ID. So it was a legacy field that we had as we migrated over. And it occurred to us as I was looking through the data, well, how many times is that actually populated? So working with my product owner, I gave her the information just looking at the particular field and decided how often that was populated. And we come to find out it's not populated that often. So we can go back to the content owner and say, do you really need this field? Does this field really add any value? And then we can go ahead and retire that field, deprecate it, and not have to worry about it. It cleans up the UI. It lets the users know that you're thinking about this stuff. And it really lets them understand, hey, if I have old fields and I can probably get rid of those, maybe add a field that's a lot more valuable for the content that I have. So content, as I think everybody here would understand, is not necessarily stagnant. It's always changing. What you had 2 years ago may not be valuable now. And I can help work with you to come up with a strategy to help that. So add, update, and retire that content in those fields as you can. So I think as you go through your launch, remember you want to prioritize, keep those lines of communications going, let people know that you're still here and you're still working with them, and prune and clean the data as you can. It really does help things out. Now you're on the trip, right? So we're on the trip here. Here we are, Fraser Island, going on the trip and enjoying it along the way. But remember, it's still a trip, right? So we still have actions that we can do. So you want to provide updates on it. Be transparent. So as I said, we have those weekly SME meetings. I'll give updates on it. And we'll be transparent about it. So I publish out our metadata schema every time we have a release. Right now we work on about 30 to 45 day schedule. So I have a new metadata schema that I publish out to our intranet every 30 to 45 days. If somebody emails me and wants to know what the metadata schema is, sure, here you go. I send it to them. If they want to set up some time to talk through it so I can walk them through kind of what the different tabs mean, not a problem. You just want to make sure that it's not, they don't think of it as a black box, so that it's not just this big scary thing that sits there. They understand that there's somebody, me, behind the scenes that can take them through it. So I also have an intranet page and a blog. So folks know I know taxonomy isn't exactly the most exciting stuff that you can do, but I do my best to make it exciting as I can. But I have one of those, and that's just good to know, as you think about it, that there is somebody, as I said, behind the scenes kind of thinking about your content, thinking about your data. So the conversations that you have with the users, you want to make sure that you encourage those. You really want to make sure that it is a two-way street and you're not just always projecting out to them, that if they come to you with questions and concerns, they can do it. It can be a tough position, and I totally get that. And I've had many questions and many conversations where the answer that I want to give to them is, no, you can't do that. But it's tough. You don't want to be in that position, right? So as a great mentor, a friend of mine always used to say is, it's not really saying no, it's getting to the other yes. And that's really what they want to hear. They want to hear the other yes. They just want to hear you say it. And if you can't really convince yourself to get to the yes, then you can work with them to at least be okay with saying, well, how about this instead? So an example of that is, you may have heard a little while ago that we had a minor merger in the tech industry with a company called EMC, forming a new company. As part of that, our brand folks were keen to go ahead and make sure that we had all of the new logos. And the new logos were going to be ready for prime time when we were able to announce the completion of the merger and get those published out. So I was on a call, and we were talking about having those logos ready. And the person who was in charge of the logos and wanted to be very careful about that they were embargoed and they were not going to be out on a particular day before that day, she said on the phone, okay, so what we'll do is we'll take the logos and we'll put them in a new folder and we'll call the folder New Logo. And I was on the call and I said, okay, not a problem. We can definitely put it in a new folder, but we're not going to call it New Logo. So we'll come up with something, maybe post-merger logo or logo after a particular date or whatever it's going to be. But we can come up with it, so it won't be a problem. And she stopped for a second and said, how come it can't be New Logo? I said, well, if you call it New Logo, new isn't really a good way to define that particular folder because it's not going to be new in a year, right? A year from now, it's just going to be our logo. So we don't want to tie ourselves to having it. But anyway, that's not important. Don't worry. We can definitely have a new logo, a new folder. And we can call it and work with it. That'll be great. So the call continued for about 5 more minutes, and we kind of talked through some other things. And right as the call was wrapping up, she said one more time into the phone, she said, okay, well, do whatever you want. I still don't understand why we can't have a new logo folder. Click, and hung up. And that was it. So it's one of those conversations. I can't say that they're always going to go great. But it was one of those conversations where I thought, okay, well, we got to make sure that we're getting to the, well, how about this instead? I was still meeting their needs. We were still able to achieve what we wanted. But again, just fair warning, sometimes those will be a little bit difficult, but they're still great conversations to have. And start your own conversations. So this is one of the unique things that I started inside Dell is that we have a monthly taxonomy community of practice. So I bring together data folks, I bring together folks that work with data, that work with metadata, that understand it, that are really kind of intrigued by keeping things organized. Inside of marketing and outside of marketing, we have our knowledge management folks join that call. And we meet monthly, as I said, and talk about best practices. We'll give kind of case studies on some of the work that we've done. I've shown them some of the taxonomy testing that we've done for the Dam, some card sorts that we've done at Dell Technologies World. We'll take it through some of the consulting work that groups do, all based around metadata, all based around taxonomy, tagging, classification, whatever that's going to be. We'll talk about industry work that's going on. Maybe there are some industry stories that are going on about how best to handle metadata or organize it, those type of things. So we'll have that. We'll do tips and tricks. Anybody looking for, I don't know, an authority for geographies. Well, have you looked at ISO? Have you looked at any of the other standards that are out there? Maybe that's something you can use rather than you trying to constantly maintain, some list of countries that you don't really necessarily need to do. So it's those type of conversations. Again, calling it a taxonomy community practice brings it up to a level that lets everybody know that we do take this seriously. And these are the pieces that kind of some of the steps that we do. Not directly tied to the Dam, but they understand that that's my primary focus and that's some of the work that we're doing. So it really starts bringing it and breaking down those silos of data that you have across all the different pieces. So as you go through this, just very quickly, as you're taking these actions, update the data, is, provide updates as you go through everything, have those conversations and evangelize taxonomy and metadata. I think it really kind of points you in the right direction. So an important thing that you can also think about as I go through these is, as I mentioned earlier, having some production issues right at the start for us, not everything goes exactly the same way, goes exactly perfectly. So I thought I would take a couple minutes and give you some of the things that I would classify as distractions as we went through this. So if you're launching a dam, if you're going on AEM and going through those pieces, like a lot of companies will do, you'll have a systems integrator. You'll have somebody that kind of helps you along with this. So some of the advice that I would present is making sure that you understand that any advice that you get, especially from your systems integrator, is just that. It's advice. It's not necessarily something you need to take as gospel. Maybe you would think about taking it as maybe Yelp reviews. I kind of think of it like that. So one of the examples is we really wanted to use multi-value fields. Our systems integrator said, oh no, something like that would have to be customized. And then we come to find out later that it's actually out of the box. So that's one of those situations where if we had pushed a little bit more, we would have found out that it actually is out of the box and we could have it. But again, there's a lot going on as you're leading up to launch. Time is critical. And so we took their advice absolutely as gospel and said, okay, we'll move on to the next thing and just keep going. So one of those cases where you might just want to think about and scrutinize some of the advice that you get. Another thing you can do is go through the tests with purpose. Make sure that you understand really what you're testing for. So one of the examples that I give is, so if you're not going to be, if there's something that you're thinking about in your rollout that you've already made as a rule that you're not going to do. So for us, it was fiscal year. We decided that the fiscal year metadata field for our assets is not something that we needed to continue to use. We just didn't find it as valuable since there's a lot of subjectivity to the fiscal year. So that was something that we were not going to do. So we were not going to run tests that would give the opportunity for our users to say that fiscal year is definitely something that they need to have. That was just something we were going to work with as far as training goes and communications and help them understand how they can get that information somewhere else. So test with a purpose. If you have hard and fast rules, make sure you're not setting yourself up so you're testing and getting rules back that break those, or getting answers back that break those rules. Lastly is what we call triangulating your data. So make sure that you understand the source, use case, and data organization for any type of content that you get. Make sure that it's really a valuable piece. We have a vehicle field in our metadata schema, and we wanted to make sure that we got all of the sources for that, all of the use cases, and really organized it. So we turned that into a tags field and talked to all the stakeholders so that we understood what all the vehicles are. So from our infrastructure group side and our CS side, we met with those folks and really broke down with all the vehicles. Some of them overlapped, some of them didn't, and that's fine. But we just wanted to make sure that we triangulated it so that we understood all of that content. So those are just some things you can think about as you go through. And what that really does is that sets you up for the end of the trip. But as we all know, it's really never the end of the trip, right? There's always going to be that next horizon. You go over those mountains, and then there's always another expanse beyond that. But you're built for success. You're ready to go for the next one. Whether it's 1 million assets or 100 assets, you now know what to ask, who to engage, and how to prepare for that, right? You set a strong foundation. You have processes in place, and you can adapt that data strategy because you've just done it, and you're ready to go. And it's repeatable. So you can go ahead and continue those conversations, and we actually now I'll have cases where I have folks reach out to me and they ask me to run, card sorts and data taxonomy tests and all of those great things. And that's something that, a couple years ago just would have been unfathomable. So it's really important. But it set us up to really get to the next level and be able to take those new features that are coming along. So when you think about Adobe AEM 6.4, there are a lot of great features that we're certainly looking forward to. So Glen's going to come up and he's going to talk about a few of those, and I'm going to stay up on stage here and give a few more. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers. Thanks very much, Adam. That was amazing. I must say, I love to hear stories like that. I love to get the opportunity to talk to our customers like Adam and like yourselves and actually get an insight into how you are using our solutions to solve real challenges that you face. As Adam mentioned, today I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking to you about the technology side of things. Amy mentioned at the top, and I'll just progress the slides, at the top of the session that there's 3 key things to deliver great experiences. You need people, you need great process, and obviously you need fantastic technology. I think it's probably fair to say that we're all pretty busy as individuals. I know I certainly am. When I'm not busy at work, I've got 2 young little girls at home that keep me very much on my toes. And we can see too that the explosion of devices and channels that we've seen in the last few years is also making our jobs somewhat harder. We have to create more content. We have to deliver it to more devices. We have to make sure that it looks great on each of those things. I'm not sure about yourselves, but who would have thought that voice, if we had rolled the clock back 5 years, would be as predominant as it is now? I know, our journey of voice happened at home when I got Alexa. My daughter's 5-year-old. Her favourite thing to do at the moment is, "Hey Alexa, play Jingle Bells in the living room." That was great, the first time. After the 15th millionth time, Jingle Bells is getting a little bit old. Lucky it is a dubstep version of Jingle Bells, so I can kind of live with that. So, as I said today, I want to talk to you about some of the new features that are coming in AEM 6.4. Apologies for using acronyms. We live in the technology world. For those of you that are unfamiliar, AEM, Adobe Experience Manager. In a similar way to you said that you'll use metadata and taxonomy interchangeably, I'll probably use some acronyms in there, so call me out as I go. Before we dive into that though, I'd like to just actually get started with a quick video. The video is pretty awesome. If you feel the mood takes you to get up and dance, by all means, don't let me stop you. But let's jump into it.
Check it out now. Gonna make all the men bow, yeah, don't you know it?
I don't know about you guys, but I must admit I love these videos. Adobe does 2 great things. We make awesome software, but we make kick-ass videos. Next time you find yourself, we're all busy, but next time you do find yourself on YouTube watching cat videos, I can highly recommend search for Adobe The Heist. Do yourself a favour. It's actually an ad, but it's quite an enjoyable one. Don't do it now. Later. Somebody else's session, not mine. But as I said, let's jump in. So, as you would have seen today, I think, Adam, you'd probably agree that getting people to adopt solutions is critical to getting value out of that and then providing great experiences. So you might have also noticed too that metadata is critical to being able to do that, but it can be overwhelming. And Adam, sorry, it's large M, small d.
Sorry, I'll let it go this time.
Okay, thanks. But again, just simply presenting a form of metadata fields can be overwhelming for people, and you're probably going to be a little bit overwhelmed and may not know how to do that very well. So we've identified that as something that we can help improve for you. If we look at something like presenting every field, as I said, it's just not going to be useful. So we want to be able to enable you to provide some context around those things. Only present to people what they actually need to use, and have that change in time as they're using it. So we call that contextual metadata. In this case, we've got just some basic metadata here about an image that we're working with. Really what we want to be able to do though is actually present to the person filling out this form just the fields that they actually need. So as you would expect with an image, you might want to fill out things like the format or the image and the width. Now, of course, a lot of these things can be extracted automatically. But where this really comes into its own right, I think, is really around being able to provide that form to dynamically change as you're actually manipulating that content. The old don't make me think scenario, I think, applies to this. So in this case, we're actually seeing metadata for a media asset, and in this case, it's actually a video. So instead of now presenting back to me the width and the height, which was relevant for an image, we're now presenting back data here that's relevant for a video, so the codec, for example.
And that was one of the pieces that really we struggled with as we went through it. For all of our users, them uploading the metadata and holding them accountable for that metadata was a change. In the previous system that we had, they more or less filled out bare minimum metadata and just kind of threw it over the transom. So we had to take them through the process of uploading and having all that metadata. Being able to do this so that if I'm uploading a product image, all of those product fields show up. But if I'm doing a Marcom communication piece and it doesn't have any product information, I don't even see those fields. I think the users are going to be fantastic. Really, really happy to see that.
Yeah, I agree. And as I said, this isn't just trapped to the developers. So I think back to your point, Adam, before when you were talking about having just a drop down of values. This can all be set up by you. So what we're seeing now is the metadata schema. So this is a drag and drop environment where you can actually create those business rules and those relationships. So you're not just bound to what we as Adobe believe is the metadata and the relationships that you need. You can go beyond so that it is really providing that data that you need for your organization that's unique. The second piece that I want to talk to you about is what we call smart translation. Now, I'm sure you've heard Sensei mentioned a lot throughout the session so far. You will hear more Sensei. Sensei is awesome and is amazing. Sensei is everywhere. But when you consider a metadata solution that we've been talking about, Dam, typically speaking, you'll have one regional language. And Adam, I think you mentioned that Dell standardized on English globally.
Yeah, that's correct. Even though it's a global system for us, we've definitely gotten requests to have different languages available and support.
Yeah. And again, this is an area that we believe that we can help you with, and this is in AEM 6.4. So naturally, Dell being a global organization would have many staff members, I guess, where English is not their first language. Spanish, for example, would be a common language. Wouldn't it be great if we could actually go through and start searching in your natural language for assets that you want to be able to find? With Smart Translation Search, we can do just that. So just a little quick video of what the world might look like without Sensei. So at the moment, we're searching for assets for a man. If I search in Spanish using the same term, I don't get anything. I don't get anything because all my assets are not tagged in Spanish. Now, I don't know about you, Adam, but I wouldn't want to have to go back through the 100,000 thereabouts assets that you have and start tagging those in Spanish, let alone every other language that you want to actually do this in. If we introduce Sensei, Sensei can actually dynamically translate those terms on the fly for me into the language that I need so that I don't have to retrospectively translate all of the assets that I've got, and I can actually start to find them and make that process a lot easier for my staff so that they get better optimization out of the solution that they have. So really, we're looking at trying to introduce little features like this to actually save you time, make you more efficient, and allow you to get on to watching those cat videos. So again, moving on with the metadata theme, custom smart tags. So for those of you that have been around Adobe Experience Manager in the past, you'll know that we've had smart tags for some time. Smart tags are awesome. In fact, they're using Adobe Sensei to do this. So for example, in this case, we've got two assets. They're pictures of shoes. We can use Sensei to automatically tag those assets, the fact that they are shoes, among other things. It might recognize the colors, for example, in these images. This is fantastic, and this is really great because it provides me with the ability to quickly add a myriad of tags quite quickly. But we can go one step further. We can actually train Sensei to recognize attributes that are unique for you, for your organization. So Adam and I were talking about this as something that we might look to do for Dell in the future, but to start doing things like recognizing, is it a laptop, is it a desktop, is it an XPS, is it a Latitude, is it what types of characteristics, and doing that at scale. so that you can do these things quite quickly.
Yeah, that was one of the pieces I think I had told you. I remember sitting in Summit and seeing the custom tags, and my product owner and I literally got up out of the seat and ran to the Adobe booth to find out more about this. 'Cause you have the use case exactly right. The smart tags are great, but we don't necessarily need help telling us that it's a laptop. We know it's a laptop as we upload those images. But to be able to configure it and have the custom smart tags leveraged by Sensei to tell us, like Glen was saying, that it's an XPS, or a different type of laptop, that's extremely valuable for us, and that's something we're definitely looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's here now, it's real, it's amazing. Let's move on. So the last piece that I wanted to talk to you about is Smart Crop. So again, coming back to, we're all busy, we're all incredibly busy. You might have beautiful images like this. You've probably got thousands of images like this. If you're in the product space, you probably have so many variations of any given product image that you need to provide across all of those different devices. For those of you that are playing at home and you can recognize that image, it's from a very reputable retailer, We Retail, from the AEM demo website that I've just sampled here. But as I said, we want to be able to use this image across advertising, across different device sizes, for different purposes, across print, all of these things. And each of those devices and each of those channels have unique characteristics when it comes to size and the way we need to present those images. But again, that can be time consuming if you have to go through the production process of resizing and recropping and doing all of these things. We can utilize Sensei to help us out there as well. Sensei allows us to understand what the focal point of any particular image might be, again using machine learning, to understand where we want to actually position that crop. Now you might also think, well, this is great, but I don't necessarily trust the machines. I don't always know whether it's going to get it perfectly right. You'll notice up there on the screen that there's actually a bounding box around some of these images. You, as an intelligent human being, can go in there and change those crop marks as well. So really, we're accelerating your time to get things done. So what I'd like to sort of summarize is really what we're trying to achieve with these features. Now, what we've gone through today is by no means an exhaustive list of everything that we're doing in AEM 6.4, not to mention with Sensei. But really, these things, contextual metadata and smart translation search, we want to try and encourage individuals within your organizations to get in and use these things to deliver value to your team and to your customers. And also too, we want to be able to save you time. Nobody wants to spend time entering 1 million tags if a machine can do that faster for you and automatically. And lastly, I guess, just we all are time poor. We all want to do more. We all have greater expectation of our time and what we need to achieve. So we want to be able to enable you to do more with less.